turn to chapter 35 of Exodus. And verse 34. It tells us, let us read probably again the verses. From verse 30, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord had called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And he filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom, in understanding, in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious work, to work in gold and silver and brass, and in the cutting of stones, to set them, and in carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. It tells us, and he had put in his heart that he may teach both he and Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, that had been filled, them had he filled with wisdom of heart, of work, to work in all manner of work, and of the engraving of the cunning workmen, of the embroiderer of blue, purple, scarlet, and in fine linen, and of the weaver, even of them that do any work, and of those that devise cunning work. Gold, silver, brass, stones, tells us of blue, of purple, of silver. Brethren, if we should pick apart these metals and the colors, it all speaks of Christ. All speaks of Christ. Because it is easy to, at times, to open the scriptures and look at various things in light of New Testament truth. We know gold speaks of the deity of Christ. At times it speaks of divine righteousness. We know silver speaks of redemption. Brass speaks of judgment. If we would say of blue, it speaks of the heavenly man. There's a man in the glory. If we speak of scarlet or purple, he is King of kings and Lord of lords. And if we speak of scarlet, he is the King of Israel. Listen, it's a hymn book. It's about him. And when we look every place, we recognize that one of the things that came out in the scriptures is the work of the Spirit of God in relation to the person of the Lord Jesus Christ. He has come to glorify him. He has come to take the things of Christ and reveal them unto us. And remember when he rose from the dead and he met those on the road to Damascus. Emmaus, He said, he expounded unto them the things concerning himself in the law, the prophets, and the Psalms. The call of God. Saints, I want to take this backdrop and turn to 2 Kings. 2 Kings. Second Kings chapter 2. And it came to pass, verse 1, when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by the whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went both of them to Bethel. And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha, and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, yea, I know it. Hold your peace. And Elijah said unto Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho. And sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha, and said unto him, knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, yea, I know. Hold your peace. And Elisha said unto him, tarry, I pray thee, here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan. And he said, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they two went together. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood by to view afar off, and the two stood by the Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle and wrapped it together, and smote the waters, and they were divided hither and thither, so that they two went over on dry ground. And it came to pass, when they gone over, that Elijah said unto Elisha, ask what I shall do for thee, before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both thither. And Elijah went up by the whirlwind into heaven. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more. And he took hold of his own clothes, and rent them in two pieces. And he took up also the mantle of Elisha that fell from him, and went back, and smote by the banks of Jordan, and stood by the banks of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah, and fell from him, and smote the waters, and said, where is the Lord God of Elijah? When he had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elijah went over. I want to just spend a little time with this, because we are talking about Christ-centered ministry, and the challenge that we have in this day. We had seen in chapter 19 of 1 Kings how Elijah was threatened and he ran for his life. And he came to a place and asked God to take his life. He alone was standing for God. Tremendous victory at Mount Carmel. I alone. And God had to remind him, listen, I have reserved 7,000 who have not bowed to the feet of Baal. Bow nor kiss the feet of Baal. I have reserved unto myself. There are godly people in this world. There are saints who love the Lord. And they may not be upfront like some of us. But I tell you, the things they do in secret at times, you're amazed. But it was really a troublous time for Elijah. Trouble, real trouble. And a lot of individuals believe that I want to show another side of this work. Because Christ-centered ministry, it is not an easy work. It is not a smooth path. It is not a bed of roses. It is not to sail with the wind. It is, you are going against the current, and you are going against the grain of this world and the thinking of the flesh. And it's a life first before it's a ministry. And Elijah, here it is, this bold, vigorous, energetic man fell under the strain of this work. And now God sent him to anoint Elisha. And Elisha was ready. Because as Brother Sam said this morning, he was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen. The man was very industrious. And now plowing is hard work. But the fact is he was occupied. And Elijah came and threw his mantle on him and never questioned it because he was prepared. But this is the last journey. We hear nothing of him anymore. This is the last journey with his master. And I don't want to take it down the line of Israel. I don't want to take it down the line of where Israel should have gone from these different points. I want to take it down the line of the master taking his servant to show him indeed how difficult the path is. Because he had to let him know, you know what you're getting into? You know what you're getting into? You know, I came to a point where I said, if my son come and ask me that he wants to go into full-time service, and knock him out. And knock him cold out. And if he gets up, I say, boy, you're ready. But if he stays down, after a while I says, no, don't get into this. He took him first. And he brought him to Gilgal. He says, because I want you to know, this path you are taking is not an easy path. It's a path that is very difficult. It's a path, if your eyes are not on the risen Christ, you are in trouble. If your eyes are not on him, you are going to run back. You are going to turn back from this fight and from this journey. Took him on the last journey. He said to him, he came to Gilgal. You know what happened to Gilgal. I'm not going through all the verses. Gilgal was the place of self-judgment. Gilgal was a place where the reproach of Egypt had rolled off from the people, rolling away. It was the place where they ate the old corn of the land, where they celebrated the Passover, where indeed the manna ceased, where indeed the captain of the host of the Lord was there. It was there at Gilgal. But at Gilgal also, remember in Judges chapter chapter 2, where the angel came from Gilgal to Bochim, because the people of God had forgotten. Indeed, God, they've forgotten the victory. They had forgotten that God had brought them out of Egypt. What a miraculous deliverance. And God had shown to them, indeed, what a wonderful God. Indeed, and God says, every time you come back to Gilgal, the place of self-judgment, and judge yourself in my presence, that any victory you have won, it is because of me. They had forgotten that. And the angel in the book of Judges had to come from Gilgal to Bochim, and indeed, as it were, the place of weeping, and said, listen, didn't I brought you out of the land of Egypt? Didn't I brought you through the wilderness? Indeed, what did I do that you has forsaken me? When Joshua died, and all the elders that outlived Joshua, they rose up a generation that knew not God. Knew not God. The danger, brethren. I've been at this place, you know. I've been at this place when Brother Mayhew was here. I've been at this place where Brother Hunt was here. And I hear all about the brothers who I never knew. Brother Darcy and all these brothers that they talked about in the United States. They are gone. They are gone. And now we want to take you to this place of Gilgal. Indeed, this journey, and let you ponder yourself there. Do you know, indeed, you have to realize, indeed, that is there, the flesh was cut off at Gilgal. Indeed, and he said, in other words, he was saying to him, you ready to empty yourself? You ready that you come to an end? You ready that this, indeed, this life that you once had? And the man demonstrated, Elisha, that he was ready, because he killed one of the oxen and he boiled it with the yoke. He says, I finish with this, and I'm ready to serve the Lord. The next place he took him was Bethel. No. And he says, tarry here. He said, boy, I'm going on. They took him to Bethel. We know in the book of Genesis chapter 12, Abram set up an altar between Bethel and Ai, between the house of God and a heap of ruin. He ended up in Egypt. He came back and he built an altar there. We read in in Genesis chapter 28, about Jacob also, who indeed called it Bethel, the house of God. Dreadful place. This is none other than the house of God. Then when he was coming back, God said to him, get up to Bethel. And he said to them, listen, put away those strange gods that you have. Because God tell him to get up there. But he came to El Bethel, the God of the house of God. But also, Bethel became a place of idolatry. And this was a challenge for us and for him. In other words, he's saying, listen, which one are you going to choose? This house of God. And there's 3 places in the New Testament the house of God is mentioned. It's mentioned in Timothy, how thou ought to behave thyself in the house of God, the pillar and ground of the truth. Indeed, it brings before us, we on display. But then after having, indeed, brethren, a priest over the house of God, let us draw near. That's for approach. But judgment begins at the house of God. And if it begins at us, where will the ungodly and sinner appear? He tells them, tarry here, tarry here. But he says, no, I'm moving on. Then he brought him to Jericho. Jericho, though by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down. Fell down. But also it was there where when Joshua cursed the place. And he says that the man that rebuild this place, he will set up the foundation in his older son and the gate in his younger son. And this man tried to rebuild this cursed place. But it's also a place where Achan took the Babylonian garment, and the children of Israel suffered for it. Then he took him to the Jordan. And he says, came to the Jordan. strike the Jordan, and they went through on dry ground. What a lesson. Saints, for us, we are dead with Christ and raised with him. We have crossed the Jordan. But this master was teaching his disciple some very valuable lessons. These are places that are going to test every servant of God. Gilgal. Learn some more about it. Bethel. Learn some more. You know anything about the truth of the house of God? Learn about the Jericho. Learn about the Jordan. He says, this is places, and he says, what do you want? Tell me, what do you want? I want a double portion in your spirit. I want a double portion. He says, yes, you'll get if you see me go up. Well, he did see him, and the man returned in the power of the spirit of Elijah. Since that was just a little background, I'm just taking a short portion of your time. We go in to chapter 3 of 2 Kings. Speaking about unity. It tells us in verse 1, now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign in Israel in Samaria, the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. And he wrought evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father and like his mother, for he put away the image of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he cleaved unto the sin of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which made Israel to sin. He departed not thereof. This is him. Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep master, and rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams with wool. And it came to pass, when Ahab was dead, that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went out of Samaria the same time and numbered all Israel. And he went and sent Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, saying, the king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses. And he went, and he said, which way shall we go up? And he answered, the way through the wilderness of Edom. So the king of Israel went, and the king of Judah, and the king of Edom, and they fetched a compass of 7 days' journey, and there was no water for the host, for the cattle that followed them. Let me just say this as Jehoram, he was an apostate. Jehoshaphat, a godly man. And the king of Edom, verse 9, what an alliance. 3 men, 3 kings. And they came to a place. And when they came to this place, they realized a great dilemma. And it says in verse 10, and the king of Israel said, alas, the Lord had called these 3 kings together to deliver them in the hands of Moab. It meant disaster, defeat, destruction for them. But Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that he may inquire of the Lord by him? And one of the king of Israel's servant answered and said, here is Elisha, the son of Shaphat, which pour water on the hand of Elijah. And Jehoshaphat said, the word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said unto the king of Israel, what have I to do with thee? Go to to the prophets of thy father, and to the prophets of thy mother. And the king of Israel said unto him, Nay, for the Lord had called these 3 kings to gather together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. And Elisha said, As the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, surely wait not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. I would not look towards thee, nor see thee. Now, how are they going to get victory? What a situation. An apostate king, a godly man, and a king, and the king of Edom. And Elisha said, you know, if it wasn't for Jehoshaphat, you wouldn't even come through the door to see me. But what he did was this. He said, no, bring me a minstrel. And it came to pass while the minstrel played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him. And he said, Thus saith the Lord, make the valley full of ditches. Listen, since there are situations that are so difficult, there are situations at times, how can we have harmony? You know, I wrote in this Bible, when we were cracking up, I'm talking about the fellowship, when we were dividing and parting left, right, and center. Oh, I wrote in this book, you don't know how it hurts to be outside of the situation and look in and you cannot do anything. We in the Caribbean were helpless while other places were cracking up. Friends who loved the Lord, friends who walked with us, friends we sat with, friends we studied with, and you says, where they went, what happened? How harmony is going to be brought? How harmony is going to be brought into a situation like this? You know, Elijah looked at the situation, he says, I got to bring some harmony into this situation. Hey, probably in Barbados, everything moves smoothly. Boy, I tell you, smooth like butter. You know, everything is in harmony. Or probably in Guyana, or in Trinidad, or in Jamaica, everything, there's no trouble. Everything is cool. And you know, I tell you, no problem. We just look to heaven. You know, in St. Kitts. Indeed, listen, saints, in every region there is trouble. Every region. But what is the solution? What is the solution when we talk about Christ-centered ministry? Listen, Christ-centered ministry brings indeed solutions. It brings harmony. And some people, you know, we are not Pentecostals, where they have indeed they bring people and talk. We are going to have a healing service tonight. Bring the lame, bring the blind. Indeed, they will leave walking. But I am telling you this, the healing ministry is still vibrant, you know. But it's not the way people think. Indeed, it's Jesus that brings healing to a company. And now, here is this company. Saints, we believe nothing could be done here. Indeed, and this man Elisha, a prophet of the Lord, who was taught under, indeed, Elijah, said, you know what I went through? I went through Carmel, you know. I went through Carmel, and I went through, indeed, individuals, indeed, who didn't like my ministry. And this man was prepared. He was so prepared that when he was going up from Elijah, they called him a bald-head man. Thou bald-head. He said, oh, a bald-head, all right. And he took care of them. He said, bring me a minstrel. No, what it means, the Spirit of God have to tune up, you know, the lives to bring some harmony to some situations. Tune up, and as he played, and this discordant song, indeed to bring harmony indeed into subjection to the life with God, as he prayed, the Spirit of God indeed give the answer. I tell you, saints, sometimes to get the word for the moment is a struggle, you know. It's a real struggle. Ask those who minister. Because after you've been preaching for years, indeed, I've been preaching probably about 40 years, Ashton probably about 60, indeed, and we ask Sam. After, it is easy because you could say, hey, you know, I come to Barbados. They never hear me on this before. So let me throw it out. You see, and that's the danger. But to have the word for the moment, this man needed that. He says he could have said, hey, listen, fella, you get out of my sight. You know, I don't want to see you, Jehoram, and that guy from Edom, out of here. I am only speaking to Jehoshaphat. No, he didn't say that. He indeed worked and he get the mind of God. I want the mind of God for the moment. It's a challenge, brethren, for God to give what is needed for the company. That indeed it may be one message, but all of us get something different for ourselves. That is a prophetic word. That is what we want. That is what I want. I don't want no brother to come and occupy the desk and waste my time. Indeed, after he comes down, I'm going to say to him, listen, brother, you know, listen, I want you when you get up here. Indeed, I want to be fed, because sometimes you're feeding people all the time. You want to be fed too. Indeed, and here it is, you waste my time. Listen, saints, get into the presence of God for the word for the moment. This man did that. And after he did that, he tells them here, he said, no, bring me a minstrel. And as he played, bringing the situation into harmony that he may get the mind of God, he said unto them, he said thus said the Lord, make the valley full of dishes, make room for water. And he says, no, all of us got to get a pickaxe, all of us got to get a spade, and all of us got to do some digging. Let's remove what is there that water may flow. And oh man, every spade, every shovel. You know, when we came here, we used the shovel. We had a hoe. And he didn't say nothing about hoe here. All he says is make. He says make this valley full of ditches. Let's start digging. No water ain't coming yet. But let's make room that the water may flow. What is in my life is stopping the flow of the water. Not your life, is mine. I am not going to point no finger at you. I am going to point the finger at me. Bryan, what is in your life that God cannot move? God cannot send the water. Indeed, why? But if I get off of this mountain that I am on and come down in the valley, the Bible says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due season. Look at the kings who humbled himself. Even wicked Ahab humbled himself, and God says, wow, look how he humbled himself. In the wicked Ahab, God says, I'll not bring judgment. The longest reigning king in the Bible is Manasseh. And Manasseh was so wicked. Man, that man take the house of God, Bethel, and he put all kind of stuff in it. He put the altars for all kind of gods. He put up all kind of statues, and he burned his sons and passed his son through the fire. And God sent him up to chains in Babylon. And then he humbled himself, and God sent him back. Listen, humility indeed is golden, and this is what we need. We need humble brethren. That things could run without Brother Bryan Baptiste, and things could run without you. None of us is indispensable. And God will say, you know, when I was in my apprenticeship, they had a young guy called St. Louis. And all of us were competition, you see, who was the best student. And one day, I didn't come to school. And I said to St. Louis, boy, how they get this thing done? You know, I wasn't saved then, but he rebuked me. He said, hey, let me tell you this. You think because you wasn't here, we couldn't get things done? He says, hey, come, let me show you. Look, it's finished. It's finished. So don't believe we miss you. And listen, you could be on a job, and amazing, you believe you holding up this job. But the moment you die, they find some place for somebody else. And my father, I often say, my father used to say to me, boy, one thing they cannot bury is work. You could never bury work, but they bury people. So if you want to work yourself to that, go ahead. But I tell you this, you cannot bury work. But one thing we have to do, all of us have to work together. We have to dig the ditches. We have to get our fork, or we have to get our shovel, our spade, and make room. Now, hear what he says. In verse 17. For thus said the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet the valley shall be full with water, that ye may drink, both you and your cattle and your beasts. He says, and this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. He says you will not see wind, because you're looking for wind to say, bring in the clouds, you see. He says you will not see rain, but wind, but I tell you, he says the water is coming. In other words, he's saying, listen, don't look for it coming from heaven. It's here already. It's here already. The Spirit of God is here. He came 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years. He never left. But you know what happened? We relegate him to the back seat. We tell him, hey, we are going to make our plans and you endorse it. Instead of we ask him for his plans and indeed we support it. No, we tell the Spirit of God, you keep aside. And this is what happened to Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was in an ungodly alliance. And the prophetic word came and they dig ditches. And he says, don't look for it up in heaven like Elijah's there. Indeed, see a hand as a cloud of a man. Indeed, no. He says this is the time where God is going to send the water, and he's going to, you and your cattle and everyone will feed. Look at what he said in verse 18. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. And he shall smite every fenced city and every choice city, and shall fall every good tree, and stop all wells of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones. This is the secret. Verse 20. And it came to pass in the morning, when the meal offering was offered, that behold, there came water by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. Saints, it says it came to pass in the morning when the meal offering was offered. You know what it is? It's Christ. It's Christ. He presented this wonderful Father. How precious unto thee is thy beloved Son, in whom that thus perfection see thy only blessed one. Presenting Christ. This Elisha indeed presented the meal offering. Look at him. Their lives were in disarray. One godly man. But what God says, for water to flow, there must be the enjoyment of Christ in his moral perfection. Look at him, saints. He's altogether lovely. And if we are talking about harmony, this is going to bring it for us. It is going to bring it in, because when I dig my ditches and prepare and make room, search my heart, am I a contributor of the stoppage of water? Let me remove what is in my life, that it may flow. And as they offered up this meal offering, God smelled it, and God sent the water. It's Christ in all his beauty before God. What are we going to do? Are we going to make room? Are we going to make room? Am I going to pick up my shovel or my pickaxe or my hoe or my spade, whatever it is, and says, hey, I go in and start. I get down in the valley and start making room. This man, Elisha, if you read through his life, so much encounters he had, but he had a double portion of Elisha's spirit. I could remember when I was young in the faith, we used to go up in Manhattan and preach in the open air. And we had a brother called Brother Elbert Carey, but he was a preacher. And the first time I heard him in the open air, I tell the Lord, I want double portion of that. You know what happened? Right after I said that, a big fight started right in front of us. Fight. I says, I wonder if I asked for the right thing. But saints, for us, as brothers who ministers, there may be discordant lives in the company. We need a word from the Lord that is going to bring that into harmony. But as collectively, we need each one of us to dig ditches, remove whatever is hindering the water, and then present Christ. Let him ascend to God, and the victory will be ours. May God help us. In Jesus' name, amen.